Okay. Okay. I don't know if you can hear me. Just I feel we should just get started because we don't have enough time. Today we'll be talking about a very silent issue within the regions of Africa. And sorry, I have a noise coming from the background here. So this is a very salient issue, very, very important, especially if you are within the shores of West Africa, East Africa, and a part of Southern Africa. Some would actually blame me because this issue cuts across Africa. Even Central Africa, like DRC, also been affected by this issue, and it has to do with. So let's get right into it. A moment, please. Okay, the concept of this presentation today has to do with no water, no peace. What some consider to be hidden wars in Africa, because sometimes we think that some conflicts are not happening, and yes, of a truth they might not be happening, but it doesn't mean that they don't have the potency or the potential to actually happen. And and unfortunately, in Africa, we just try to ignore so many red flags, especially when it comes to bad leadership and maybe bad governance. But we just wait until things get out of proportion. Then we begin to do damage trying to caution the effect of what has already happened. Issues are actually going on within the Africa, and like I already mentioned, Africa water resources is actually a very big deal right now within our continent. If you're an African, you should know what I'm talking about. So our water resources is actually a very big deal. It's actually a very big issue, and it's not something we should just ignore. It's not something that we should just sweep under the rug. And most African, how do I put it? Most African nations are going through this. Now, for as part of this presentation, we would be referring to it partly as hydropolitics, and sometimes we also call it water politics or water crisis, depending on how you find it fitting. Now, the our water condition. Let me just mention that there are three main rivers that flows within Africa. One is the Nile. One is uh, Lake Chad, like the Chad water source that connects Niger Republic, Chad itself, Nigeria, and other parts of West Africa. Now, the other one is Zambezi. Zambezi is also another major waterfront, but Zambezi is not in focus right now. Today, we're discussing our argument to be mostly about Chad and the Nile. And the Nile is the most important one that can actually lead to this crisis if it's not properly managed, because 1.4 billion people actually depend on the water resources in Africa for survival. And if 1.4 billion people depend on water in this our continent, it is a cause to give us major attention. Now, the concept of hydropolitics and the study and the management of water as strategic resources intertwined with power dynamics, security, and development. And it is hydropolitics that's to do with water, just as that hydro implies, and the politics. That's to do with how water is being managed within Africa, how water conditions, how water situations are being managed within Africa, and how nations actually use water as a bargaining chip or as a means of security. If the water in your country is contaminated, as a leader in that country, you have failed in protecting the lives of those who are dependent on that water. Whether they're dependent on that water for the agricultural produce, whether they're dependent on the water for their for drinking or for cooking. If you cannot protect their water, that is the political aspect of our discussion. It means you have failed in the aspect of leadership. So water is very important. Water is very, I have to use the word, very sacrosanct in our survival. Now, water is not merely a commodity, but it is linked to our food. It is linked to our energy production, like what we'll be discussing today about the dam that is being built, and it also leads to our social stability, because if there's social instability, if water is not okay, like the case of Egypt, people will lose their jobs. Yes, because of this reconstruction around the Nile region, people are now beginning to lose their jobs. People are now beginning to have different issues because the Nile is being affected. So there are lots of social instability going on right now around Egypt and Sudan because of what is going on in Ethiopia. Now, drawing from historical inequalities, there are flashpoints like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which we'll still discuss later. Now, by 2050, unchecked trends actually could see that over 1,000 water-related conflicts happens annually within sub-Saharan Africa alone. Now, we have to pay attention to this, because if 1,000 water-related conflicts are bound to happen within sub-Saharan Africa, it is a call for us to actually pay attention. It is a call for concern for many sub-Saharan African nations, even nations that are not. Because see, if there's water conflicts, this is the idea. If there's a water conflict, it means people have to leave certain regions and move to a different region where they can get water and where they can survive. And don't think this thing has already started happening. Based on my findings, this thing is already happening, because people are moving away from some parts of Kenya. People are moving away from some part of DRC Congo to move to better regions where they can get water, to move to better regions where they can get this water survival. Now, yet this concept advocates for proactive and equitable governance to transform scarcity into shared prosperity, aligning with the UN Sustainable Development Goal 6 and Goal 16. Now, the UN Sustainable Development Goal 6 talks about clean water and sanitation. Meanwhile, Goal 16 talks about peaceful societies. Wait a minute. If Goal 6 talks about clean water sanitation, it means that the UN should be at the forefront of this particular issue. But unfortunately, from what we'll be finding out, the UN is not doing much with respect to this issue. If you actually understand what I'm trying to say. So the UN is not doing a lot with respect to this particular issue. Okay. Now, these are the key contents that we're talking about today. We're talking about the drivers of water conflicts, and also we'll be talking about case studies and flashpoints, and some lessons that we can learn from some of these conflicts. And we'll also be talking about water wars that are ongoing within our regions, if you don't mind. And okay. Then the third thing we'll be talking about is the pathways that we'll be using to come about our peaceful coexistence as a people. Okay. Let's talk about the first thing. The Act 1 talks about the water conflicts that is going on within West Africa. Now, the water conflict is not monocausal, from what I actually wrote here. There are so many things that have to come into place for there to be water conflict. The first thing that we have to consider is climate change and environmental degradation. Now, most times, erratic rainfalls, prolonged drought, rising temperatures, and scarcity actually contribute to most of these water conflicts. Now, it's not that there is unavailability of water. That's the point. It's not that water is not available. It's just that there are some natural occurrence that happens around our immediate environment that actually leads to most of this water conflict. Sorry. Just that there are some natural occurrence and some things that happen around us that would eventually lead to most of this water conflict, if you know what I'm talking about. So, and okay. So, apart from drought, apart from water scarcity, apart from rising temperatures, in fact, these natural occurrences have actually dried up 95% of boreholes within the region of Kenya. Think about it. 95% of boreholes within a certain region, the Turkana region of Kenya, 95% of their boreholes dried up, not because there was water scarcity somewhere, not because they now affected the region of Kenya, just because of natural occurrences, because of the should I say, topography, because of the temperature, because of the area. So those are some of the things that actually lead to some of these issues. Now, in places like Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, Djibouti, now the longest record of drought has actually led to clashes, understand, between livestock and agricultural business people, where farmers and where livestock producers actually clash because of unavailability of water. And so you now see violence that is actually being orchestrated between two business enterprises, between livestock producers and between farmers, not because we don't have the flow of water, but just because there was dryness, just because the farmlands couldn't give enough water, just because cattle couldn't get enough water to drink. Now, what mostly happens is this, that because people move towards areas where they have fresh water, and these farmers now bring their farming or their plantations towards these areas that don't have water. The cattle rearers also bring in their cattle into these areas that have limited water. There's this clash, because for the cattle to actually survive, they have to sometimes go through these farmlands, destroy these farm crops. Are we getting it? Destroy these farm crops so that they can get the water that they are looking for. And over and over again, we've actually come to, based on findings, to say that these are some of the things that leads to these clashes. Deforestation and pollution from plastic waste and fossil fuels further degrade the ecosystem, with South Africa being a major case study about this issue. So plastics, deforestation, uprooting things can also lead to some of these degradations. And these are all considered to be natural, the climate change and the environmental problems. Now, this is one aspect that leads to water crisis. There's also another aspect that leads to water crisis, which is population growth and socio-economic pressures. When a population begins to increase, it means that you need more water to survive as a people. Understand? Now, the African population is projected to double by 2050. And if we have limited water already within Africa, and our population is meant to double by 2050, there is a problem already. So it will strain our water demand. And this water is not readily available. So if you're doubling our population, if you already have a problem now, that's the idea, that's the logic now. If you already have this problem now, what would now happen in the next 25 years? This is 2025 already. So by 2050, it should be the next 25 years. What will now happen in the next 25 years when these issues, understand, even when we don't address some of these vital issues? So in Egypt, more than 100 million homes rely on water. Understand? And Egypt gets 95% of its fresh water from the Nile River. So, see, when Ethiopia started building their dam, we will get into this dam shortly. It was actually claimed that their dam affected 2% of their water flow. I want you to understand something. That it is currently affecting 2% of their water flow according to the 2025 report. And this 2% of their water flow, Egypt is claiming that affecting this 2% of their water flow invariably also affects 200,000 farming families. So for a country of 100 million people who strongly rely on water, and 95% of their water source is from the Nile, touching a part of the Nile and affecting 2% of their water flow invariably leads to 200,000 families being affected, 200,000 farming families being affected. And Egypt later on actually claims that this is affecting their economy by hundreds of billions of dollars, and that their farming economy is not moving on the way to move on. So population growth can also be a problem. My point is this: if Egypt wasn't that populated, understand, if Egypt didn't have 100 million people living surviving within the Nile, they wouldn't be discussing some of these farm clashes. That's the idea about this whole population issue. Okay, now a mere 2%. Okay, now some people that actually farm around Kenya, Somalia, also complain that unregulated water prices has actually made the price of water to increase by 400%. Understand? So there's no water, and for us to get water, we have to pay a certain amount of money. And this amount of money is not being regulated by the government. And because it is not being regulated by the government, it has led to more than 400% water increase. Think about it. The price of water suddenly went up by 400%. There's no water. Or let's say water is scarce. Water is scarce, and the government is not regulating the price of this scarce commodity that the people depend on, which is actually a very big problem. If you know that your population cannot handle certain pressures, you have to create an avenue where people can actually survive within that said economy without being exploited unnecessarily. Imagine paying 400%, having 400% increase in the price of water within your area, and it is actually a very big problem. So this inequality can actually lead to violence. In fact, it is said that this population problem, in fact, mostly affects women and children. Where I find it very, very funny, but it's not funny per se, but the figures are very funny. Where women and girls rather spend 40 billion hours annually fetching water. And now it is said that it will affect their educational life and it also lead to more poverty within that particular area. But 40 billion hours. Well, I don't know how many people that they use in making this figure, but whatever the number is, imagine spending a society spending 40 billion hours of its productive time only fetching water. And according to this study, it is said that it was because of overpopulation. So that maybe if the population was not that big, it wouldn't need those amount of water to survive on. Which I also, but we're not going into it. That logic, I find it very, very disturbing, but we're not going into it today. Understand? So that is that about that. So let's move on to the other factors that actually cause this water crisis. Some of them would actually imply historical inequalities and colonial legacies. Now, let's take, for instance, in 1902 and 1929, the Anglo-Egyptian Pact was signed, and in 1959, the Nile Water Agreement was also signed. And in these two pacts, in these two agreements, both the one between 1902 and 1929 and the one in 1959, Egypt was actually meant or said to control 66% of the water flow in the Nile, while Sudan controls only 22%, and Ethiopia controls just a part of it. Meanwhile, Ethiopia produces 85% of the Blue Nile. If I'm producing 85% of the Blue Nile, why is it that Egypt, who is not producing as much as I am producing of the Blue Nile, is controlling a large part of the Nile? Now, it's not by country side. No, it's about the governance of the Nile region. So technically, I think Egypt was also controlling part of the Nile that does not fall into Egypt. And the Ethiopians are now finding it a little bit disturbing because they see it as a colonial approach to marginalize Ethiopia. Now, the years later, they started rebelling against some of those treaties, seeing it as a colonial, like colonial masters giving more power to the Egyptians rather than the Ethiopians. Now, if you were the Ethiopians, based on the circumstances, you might also think in that same direction. So, Ethiopia building the GERD is an open rebellion to the colonial masters. I think that's the message that they're trying to pass here, saying, see, it's not like in the 1950s or 1920s where you guys controlled us. We can decide our own destiny. We can decide our own water flow. We can decide our own water movement without you stepping up or without you trying to tell us what to do or what not to do. That's the idea here. So in Sudan, militia groups weaponize water by poisoning wells and just trying to constrain people. That's disturbing. I made a video a few weeks ago talking about the Tigray region. Yeah, talking about the Tigray region. And also talking about the Sudan militia group and how they are fighting wars in Sudan and how there is conflict in Ethiopia, Tigray. And now this particular aspect pertains to that ongoing war in Sudan that has not ended. And this war doesn't have any prospect of ending anytime soon. So because of this, these Janjaweed guys are now weaponizing water. You poison wells, like wells where they go to draw water. You poison wells, and you're not making farmers, you're not making people to come to you, to be depending on you for water supply so you can control how they live their life. That's also another part of water conflict that we should also consider. So the concept about this Sudan problem is it is a man-made issue. That people weaponize water scarcity. Because if there's abundance of water, you don't look up to the government for water. So the controlling government make the common water available to people. They make that water useless for consumption or for agricultural business. Possibly even for bathing or washing of clothes. Maybe you cannot even use the water. The water is just there, but you know you can't use this water. To what end? Honestly, this is a man-made problem. And these are also part of the things that lead to our crisis often and on and on. So, and now there's also another problem. In DRC Congo, because of their war, you see a particular rebel group destroying water pipes just because they want to control their people. These are all man-made causes. These are not natural causes now. And these are based on historical inequalities and colonial legacies, according to the description of this particular problem. Honestly, it doesn't make sense. And this in the DRC region has actually made the water flow to reduce from 38% to 17% today. Just because someone blew pipelines, blew water sources, where people would ordinarily go and get water from. Someone destroyed it. Also, what end? Honestly, these are all man-made causes. These are all self-inflicted pains. Ethiopia rebelling, building this dam is a man-made cause. Sudan trying to control people. You know, Ethiopia rebelled that Egypt had always been in charge of the Nile, so they want to control their own destiny. Egypt is complaining, but Ethiopia doesn't care actually. That's a man-made cause. Sudan is also a man-made cause. DRC Congo, the Republic of Congo, is also a man-made cause. Let's look at another fourth factor: geopolitical and infrastructural shift. Now, I wouldn't want to spend time here, but back to the construction of this dam. I will show you the picture of the dam. Okay, let me just give you a historical idea. Ethiopia decided to build a dam, and I'll still play a video for you on YouTube. Ethiopia decided to build a dam, and they came up with a reason that in building this dam, it would actually improve their economy, it would supply, it would make water more available to people around Sudan and Kenya, but it can even provide electricity for people around Kenya. And all those excuses, Ethiopia sees it as a renaissance, more like a new idea, something that is very innovative, something that is very transforming for Ethiopians. And they are still embarking on this project. About this geopolitical and infrastructural shifts is that China is sponsoring part of the construction of this dam, a large part of it. In fact, China is largely into it. So Ethiopia is seeing it as a way of changing the geopolitics, changing the attention. I've already said this over and over again. Changing the political attention about water dependence in the Nile region from Egypt now to Ethiopia, and China is funding it. Are we getting it now? Okay, that's the idea. Egypt is complaining. Egypt is saying, this is not good for us. This will affect our economy. This would affect lives. But the geopolitical infrastructural shifts is that we are taking the attention away from Egypt to Ethiopia, and China is paying for it. Do we not get it now? So that's just so that I will not be reading what I have here on the screen. Okay. Now, about water scarcity itself, according to Dr. Amadla Ntembo, sorry about the distraction I had earlier. Okay. Dr. Amadla Ntembo said something, and something I find very, very interesting. Sorry. Dr. Amadla is a hydrologist. Hydrologist is someone that studies water bodies and all those things. So a hydrologist from Stellenbosch University, Dr. Amadla said that water scarcity itself does not start wars, but when you add inequalities, colonial borders, and a changing climate, water becomes a perfect accelerant. Do we get that? Okay. So Dr. Amadla is of the opinion that, see, water doesn't necessarily start, and I've said that before. That hydropolitics or water conflicts is not monocausal. It is not water scarcity does not cause wars. When you now add water scarcity to some factors like climate change, like colonial inequalities, like borders, colonial borders trying to withdraw things, okay, this country is saying we want to control this. It's not that the problem is not that the water was scarce in the first place. The problem is someone who now wants to capitalize on that scarcity to do something abnormal. Are we getting it? So, okay, let me show us some things. I don't know if you can actually understand this video, but I'm going to fast forward this video to
what does that mean? What's the capacity of one?
Now, let me give us a background to this video. This video is actually, before we get into this video, let's actually look at this grand Ethiopian dam. I believe we all can see it. This grand Ethiopian dam is the largest hydroelectric power project aimed at addressing Ethiopia's energy needs, and to them it fosters regional development. Okay. Now the Grand Ethiopian Dam, let me open it more, is located in Ethiopia, just like the name implies. And it's located around the Blue Nile region. You remember me mentioning that Ethiopia controls 85% of the Blue Nile. It is located around the Blue Nile region of Ethiopia. And it is is a gravity dam that has been under construction since 2011. So it was under construction. Let me just give us a history to it. It was under construction, and for some reasons, the UN or some foreign body stepped in and declared that no, people should stop this construction. I think Egypt filed a complaint. So they halted the construction since 2011, and it stopped. But for some reasons, they resolved the issue and they started the construction again in September 2025. So with an installed capacity of 5.15 gigawatts of electricity, it is the largest hydroelectric power plant in Africa and among the largest in the world. And like I actually mentioned earlier, China is largely into it. So the drought has been a source of tension in the region, particularly with Egypt and Sudan. Egypt has expressed concerns that the dam will reduce the flow of the Nile River, which is crucial for its water supply. In contrast, Ethiopia argues that the dam is essential for its development and energy independence. The Ethiopian government has accused Egypt of attempting to hinder the project, like I earlier mentioned. So now about the economic impact, the GERD is expected to generate $1.1 billion annually in revenue, positioning Ethiopia as a significant energy exporter in Africa. So, like, I said it earlier, there's a geopolitical realignment. They now made money for Egypt. But now, Ethiopia is saying, Egypt can go to hell for all we care. We also want to make money. We also want to benefit from the Nile region. The Nile shouldn't just be making money for one country based on what one colonial master said. We also want to benefit from the Nile region. We also want to understand. So that's what this GRD is actually talking about. So back to this. So the project is also aligned with global climate commitments and is expected to prevent approximately 25 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions each year. So the dam's construction has also led to development of local infrastructures, including schools, and that's just that about the GRD. So the conclusion of the whole thing is the GRD dam represents a significant milestone in Ethiopia's quest for energy independence and economic development. While it promises to transform the country's energy landscape, it also poses challenges in terms of regional cooperation and water resource management. The ongoing dialogue and negotiations among Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan will be crucial in determining the dam's long. So it's about Ethiopia and Egypt resolving their differences. Sudan is partly into the discussion, but Sudan is not major. Sudan doesn't have high voice in the whole thing. So what are leadership perspective about? Okay, let me play this video so that you will understand better.
New York. This is the scale of this is just crazy. What's the capacity of one of these?
One generator is 400 megawatt.
400. And that's 24/7, 365. That's always on if you want it on.
Yes.
It's crazy. And there's 16 of these in this whole facility?
16 of these.
How much water, this ballpark, is moving through
around
this?
350, 330 meter cube.
350 cubic meters
meter per second.
Every second.
Every second. Every second.
Unbelievable.
I did learn that one Ethiopian contractor had been fired and charged with fraud, another challenge in this kind of project. But overall, I had a very positive impression of the dam and its construction team.
What is this dam? How will that contribute to lifting up Ethiopia economically?
The country is leading toward industrialization, well, agricultural-based industrialization.
Right.
So for industry, having a reliable and cheap electricity backbone.
We've seen some small villages here that are probably unelectrified, I would think, cooking inside with wood and other things.
So the government has an aggressive program to electrify the country as well.
So you'll be able to provide electricity to citizens of Ethiopia.
And also we are connected to the neighboring countries. We are building a big transmission line with a capacity of over 1,000 megawatt to Kenya, which will be a venue to be connected to the Southern African grid.
Right.
It's not only for Ethiopia, I think it's a pride for Africans.